The National Desk, America's News Now.
Iran-backed militias are responsible for these continued attacks on U.S. forces, and that we will respond at a time and manner of our choosing.
The world waits to see what President Biden's response will be to the deadly attack on troops, when a decision will be made. And the Department of Justice opens a criminal complaint against a sitting member of Congress, who it is and what is at stake. And then, falling short of recruitment goals, the Navy makes a major change on who is eligible to enlist. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and President Biden said he has decided how to deal with a strike in Jordan, and that he, at least indirectly, holds Iran responsible. He has not publicly said what that response will be. 3 American service members were killed over the weekend in an unmanned drone strike in Jordan. The Wall Street Journal reports that there are 3 main options under discussion. 1, leveling more sanctions on Iran's economy. 2, striking Iran directly. And the other, waging an attack against Iranian proxies and personnel outside of its borders. This as the Biden administration works to avoid triggering a larger confrontation. In Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, supported by Iran, announced today they will halt all attacks on U.S. operations in the region. They are believed to be behind the attack in Jordan, as well as many of the 160-plus attacks on coalition forces since October 17th. The Pentagon today said actions speak louder than words, and this stand-down would not necessarily spare them from retribution. The latest proposal for a temporary fighting pause in the war seems to be dead. Both Israel and Hamas have rejected the latest framework as agreed to in Paris. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he can't agree to 2 of Hamas's key demands for a ceasefire, a military withdrawal from Gaza and the release of thousands of jailed militants. The rebuke comes after Hamas's supreme political leader said a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza remains a priority. To the southern border, December saw a record number of migrants cross into the United States. House Republicans say they want accountability, and they move forward with their 2 articles of impeachment against Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. This while the Senate continues to push for a new immigration deal, and the White House continues to be at odds with Texas. Here's national correspondent Christine Frizzell with the latest.
House Republicans laying out their case on Capitol Hill in the impeachment of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas for 1, willful and systematic refusal to comply with the law, and 2, breach of public trust.
We cannot allow a cabinet secretary with no regard for the separation of powers or the rule of law to remain in office.
GOP members of the House Homeland Security Committee blaming Mayorkas for the record number of migrants coming to the southern border. Secretary Mayorkas sending a letter to the committee just before the hearing, writing, "We need a legislative solution and only Congress can provide it," adding, "Your false accusations do not rattle me," as Democrats insist the entire effort is to appease former President Donald Trump.
The extreme MAGA Republicans who are running the House of Representatives are deeply unserious people. They don't want progress. They don't want solutions. They want a political issue.
Even if Republicans get enough votes in the full House to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, it's unlikely he'll be convicted in the Democrat-led Senate. The Senate, meanwhile, is working on bipartisan legislation to add more security after a year in which there were nearly 2.5 million apprehensions at the southwest border alone. It's brought about new urgent warnings. Former top FBI officials sending this letter to Congress, warning that military-aged men from across the globe, many from countries or regions not friendly to the United States, are landing in waves on our soil by the thousands across a border that has been accurately advertised around the world as largely unprotected. They argue even those who are apprehended are not properly vetted.
When we encounter a single adult man of military age from Lebanon, do you think the Lebanese governor are working with us closely to identify whether he's a member of Hezbollah before he's being released in the United States? No, it's not happening.
The security of the homeland, a top concern as the southern border and the country remains overwhelmed. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Donald Trump will remain on the Illinois primary ballot for now. The state's Board of Elections became the latest body to punt their decision on Trump's eligibility until after the Supreme Court makes their decision on Trump's status regarding the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment. The High Court is scheduled to hear arguments on February 8th. Illinois' presidential primary election isn't until March 19th. Missouri Congresswoman Cori Bush is the subject of a DOJ criminal investigation. The allegations revolve around Bush spending too many taxpayer dollars for her security guard in 2022, who is now her husband. The Office of Congressional Ethics voted to dismiss a case on the same grounds last year, saying it did not appear Ms. Bush abused payments for service because threats against her justified the work. Congresswoman Bush blamed political media for the new investigation.
In recent months, right-wing organizations have lodged baseless complaints against me, peddling notions that I have misused campaign funds to pay for personal security services. That simply is not true.
The Congresswoman said she is fully cooperating with the DOJ and believes she will be exonerated. NYPD officers will have to write down the apparent race, gender, and age of most people they stop to question under a new law. Today, the City Council overrode Mayor Eric Adams' veto of the legislation, a win for police reform advocates. Officers would also have to document the reason for the encounter. A sponsor of the bill said it could be done through a smartphone. Two New York brothers have been arrested and arraigned on 130 charges after police say they found homemade explosives and more in their New York City apartment. Investigators say they recovered the explosives, ghost guns, including assault rifles, anarchist propaganda, and a hit list featuring police, judges, politicians, and celebrities. The men are in custody, and their next court appearance is scheduled for February 15th. They each face up to 25 years in prison. Ohio may join Alabama and start executing death row inmates with nitrogen gas. The state's attorney general endorsed new legislation that would permit the new style of execution. Ohio has not carried out capital punishment since 2018, when Governor Mike DeWine declared that lethal injection was no longer an option. Alabama used nitrogen gas for the first time last week, which state officials said was effective and should be used by other states. This Thursday, officials in Oregon could declare a 90-day emergency to fight the fentanyl crisis. A task force recently recommended a plan to develop a command center and combine community resources. Fentanyl overdoses rose by a staggering 533% in Multnomah County from 2018 to 2022. We'll learn more details about the 90-day emergency plan on Thursday. On Capitol Hill tomorrow, a highly anticipated appearance by the CEOs of some of the biggest social media companies like TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. They're expected to be grilled by lawmakers about the child exploitation occurring on their platforms. The National Desk Atra El-Nashar explains how a coalition of concerned parents could change how these companies operate.
Todd Miner Sr. describes his 12-year-old son Matthew as adventurous, fun-loving, stood up for other kids at school.
He lit up a room when he came in.
One night at home in March 2019, Miner's older son shouted from upstairs. Something was wrong with Matthew.
When I got up there, he had something wrapped around his neck.
A military vet, Miner performed CPR. He was hopeful when he heard a pulse. But at 2 a.m. at the hospital,
that's when they told us Matthew had unfortunately passed.
A detective came to speak with Miner and his wife.
That's when he started talking about the social media challenges. And he said he was seeing a lot of this.
What they pieced together haunts them to this day. Matthew saw a blackout challenge on social media, kids asphyxiating themselves for fun.
I don't know how to get it across that I don't want other families to go through what we went through.
The Miners will be among dozens of parents and advocates in the room when CEOs of X, TikTok, Snap, Meta, and Discord testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee Wednesday, calling for the passage of the Kids Online Safety Act, legislation that would require platforms to give parents more controls to protect their kids and place more accountability on platforms for dangers posed to underage users.
They have promised for years that things would change, and they just haven't.
Many of the platforms push back on that accusation. Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram, has rolled out more than a dozen child safety features in the past year aimed at mental health and privacy. Snapchat also adding protections for teens like warnings for suspicious content. Advocates say lawmakers share the blame, holding more than 40 hearings since 2017 with little to show for it.
Our message is really simple. We want the vote, and we want it now.
I'm told parents from across the country are flying here to Capitol Hill to come face to face with these tech CEOs. Among them are parents who've also lost kids to suicide, eating disorders, or overdoses from drugs purchased through social media.
Atra, some advocates, they are voicing frustration that the hearing won't have an executive from YouTube, the most used social media platform according to Pew Research. Do we know why?
Well, I asked two of the senators leading the charge of the Kids Online Safety Act, Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Republican of Tennessee, and Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat of Connecticut, and they actually weren't entirely sure why the Judiciary Committee, which they're members of, didn't prioritize YouTube. Though I should note in my coverage of this issue over the years, YouTube almost never comes up, despite it being the most used and despite the fact that it is a social media platform. But the senators told me tomorrow's hearing is by no means the last, and they're open to hearing from YouTube in the future.
Live in Washington, D.C., Atra Elnashar, thank you. Coming up next here, Utah was the first state to lower its legal blood alcohol limit for drivers to 0.05%, why a second state could now be following suit. Then, the ADHD medication that is being recalled because it actually contains a different drug. Then, many businesses in the nation's capital are struggling or leaving the city. How the mayor is trying to bring them back. We're back in 90 seconds. The San Francisco Bay Area is preparing for a powerful storm headed towards the coast. The worst of it is expected tomorrow evening with winds reaching 60 miles an hour and heavy rain up to 7 inches. A flood watch is in effect and officials are warning about fallen trees and power outages. The mountains could get up to 3 feet of snow. The system will bring rain as far south as San Diego. Further north, Alaska is now in what some are calling a pandemic of snow. Look at these images. More than 8.7 feet of snow have fallen there, causing roofs on some buildings to collapse around Anchorage. That city is likely to break its record of 134.5 inches of snow. In your money, the labor market remains strong despite higher interest rates. New data showing job openings jumped in December to the highest number in 3 months, defying economists' predictions. There were 9 million openings, up 9 million in November. One economist says the increase is, quote, well within the margin of error. UPS is laying off 12,000 people as part of an effort to save $1 billion in costs. Most of the cuts will impact managers and contractors. The company lost business to rival carriers last year over customer concerns about a possible Teamster strike. UPS has regained around 60% of that business and expects to get most of it back. New York Attorney General Letitia James is suing Citibank over its response to fraud. In a lawsuit filed today, James said the company's failure to protect and reimburse fraud victims cost customers in New York millions of dollars. Citibank said it works very hard to stop threats from negatively impacting clients and also supports fraud victims. Washington could be the second state in the country after Utah to lower its legal blood alcohol limit for drivers to just 0.05%, down from 0.08%. An executive session began today to take up this legislation. The National Desk's Mo Hyder is in Seattle with why the state is doing this.
State lawmakers and proponents say the goal is to decrease the chances of deadly crashes caused by impaired driving.
In 2023, we lost at least 800 lives on our roadway, and that is the highest we've seen in 33 years.
According to the bill, it also says 2021 was the state's deadliest year on the roads since 2006, with 540 crashes. Here in Seattle, many agree something needs to be done.
I mean, there's too many highway deaths, there's tons of pedestrian deaths downtown here, and I think, like I said, I think there's alternatives.
Lawmakers are hopeful a change will lead to better decision-making before getting behind the wheel.
We don't always notice that we're impaired. And so this is another way to help get people thinking about what they're doing and taking responsibility by getting a safe ride home.
But the bill is getting pushback from leaders in the hospitality industry. While they agree the jump in cases when it comes to drunk driving needs to be addressed, they worry the liability it has on servers and other staff.
There is no training that exists for our staff to be able to identify somebody who has reached a 0.05 level.
Others we spoke with want to see action all across the board and not just the state level.
It should be a standard like the 08 or like the country should have a standard rather than just state.
The United States Navy is lowering its minimum education standards in an effort to meet recruitment goals. Men and women will no longer need a high school diploma or a GED to enlist. New recruits can now sign up with the Military Magnet Academy as long as they score 50 out of 99 or higher on the qualification test. During the 2023 fiscal year ending September 30th, the Navy fell 7,000 sailors below the desired recruitment goals. JetBlue and Spirit Airlines are seeking an expedited appeal of a federal court decision to block their proposed $3.8 billion merger. Earlier this month, a federal court sided with the DOJ, saying a merger of these airlines would cause undue financial burden on potential customers. The closing date of the merger, if allowed, would be July 24th, and the airlines say a normal appeal won't be complete by then. Without the merger, Spirit Airlines may face bankruptcy. Some ADHD and narcolepsy medications are being recalled due to wrong packaging. Azurity Pharmaceuticals says the recall includes one lot of Zenzetti 30 milligram tablets, a stimulant used for ADHD and narcolepsy. Pharmacists discovered an antihistamine medicine mixed into a package labeled for Zenzetti. Azurity Pharmaceuticals says they have not received any serious complaints. Around 61,000 Toyota and GM cars are being recalled because of an airbag inflator issue. Look right here. The automakers say owners of older Corolla, Matrix, RAV4, and Pontiac models should stop driving them. That includes model years 2003 to 2005. If the airbag deploys, it could release sharp metal fragments, endangering drivers and passengers. Owners should contact their dealers for repairs. Elon Musk's company Neuralink has put a device in a human brain for the first time. The goal is to make a brain implant that can help patients with paralysis using only brain signals to use a computer or smartphone. Musk says the patient is recovering well after getting the implant on Sunday. He adds that initial results show promising neuron spike detection. Those who have had a stroke sometimes have to relearn how to do everyday functions. A new trial shows a different form of fitness might help these patients swallow and eat again. Medical reporter Liz Bonus shows us how it works.
Hey there, everybody. For months, Kevin Moss could not swallow after he suffered a stroke. Now, thanks to a team of researchers testing new tongue exercises, he has an important part of his life back.
I had a playing disc golf, and I remember I went to pick up the first disc. I went to pick it up off the ground, and I got kind of lightheaded.
By the time Kevin was hospitalized for what turned out to be a brainstem stroke,
my voice slowly got worse. I could no longer stand up. I could no longer even sit up after like a couple days.
eventually Kevin was able to get back most of his physical function. But when he met up with speech-language pathologist Dr. Brittany Kreckler and Anna Hopkins of Ohio's UC College of Medicine's Dysphagia Rehabilitation Laboratory,
Kevin came in, he wasn't even able to swallow his spit. He had what I called a spit cup.
So as part of a comprehensive therapy program, Dr. Kreckler told Kevin to swallow again.
It's like breathing. You breathe without thinking, you swallow without thinking, but to retrain the way that you swallow, you're going to have to swallow and do it in a new way.
So Kevin began using this device. It's called a tongometer.
And you're going to press, release.
The team here now using the tongometer as part of a clinical trial. Its goal is to help other stroke patients who can't swallow exercise their tongues.
He's pressing that bulb with his tongue to the roof of his mouth, and it's a pressurized bulb. So this app here will measure the amount of pressure or the amount of times that he's pressing on the bulb. What this is doing is working the tongue muscles, also the muscles under the tongue that relate to swallowing.
It took a while, but Kevin says he will never forget.
The very first thing I ate was peaches. I remember that was the greatest thing ever. It was like, and before that, it was like I liked peaches. I didn't love them. Now I love them.
This trial still enrolling new patients. We have a link online for more information. And after initial enrollment appointments, they do conduct therapy sessions virtually, so you can participate from home. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Definitely fascinating. Thank you. Coming up next here, a California man shares his first impression of the Tesla Cybertruck after becoming one of the first in the state to get one. We'll be right back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
The National Children's Museum, one of 4 organizations the Bowser administration announced will receive grants to help family-friendly attractions downtown. In all, nearly $20 million in grants is available for businesses expanding or moving to the city.
We want people to think about downtown a little bit differently.
This at a time when office vacancy is at an all-time high, with downtown Washington especially hard hit. Also, Wizards and Capitals owner Ted Leonsis has announced he wants to leave Capital One Arena for Virginia. The FBI plans to move to Greenbelt, and Fannie Mae has announced it's ending a downtown lease early, but will stay somewhere in the city.
Some say it was bad enough a few weeks ago when this sign saying "Welcome to Harrison" with the mayor's name was placed under a Confederate flag. But now, as you're coming down Harrison's main road, that sign and flag is surrounded by 26 toilets.
I know it's freedom of speech, but it's not a good look for Harrison.
Some of these toilets say council. One says clerk, another says mayor. City leaders say this is not on city property and it's not a city display. In a statement, Mayor Ryan Grubb says, quote, "We do not and I do not in any way support any message this property owner is trying to send. You know all citizens have the right to free speech and individuals speak in different ways."
I never had anything like this.
Jack Vartanian has been the proud owner of this Tesla Cybertruck for just days, one of the first in the San Joaquin Valley, after waiting for years.
So we ordered this thing in 2019.
The look, just one aspect.
I really liked the whole idea, you know, the all-wheel drive, the power, all electric, just something different to try out.
Technology that turns heads, or in some cases makes complete strangers turn around in their tracks, whether it's outside Vartanian's business off Highway 41 or outside his home.
Coming up next year, the city where traffic costs drivers over 100 hours a year. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Newly released data shows which cities in the U.S. have the worst traffic. TomTom's annual traffic index has New York City at the top of the list. Probably not a surprise to most. The company says drivers there lost 112 hours sitting in rush hour traffic last year. Hopefully you have a good podcast. Next are Washington, D.C. Can attest to that. San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National Desk. We invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Just check your local listings. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight.